Hello, I'm Riddhi Santani.
I'm Kala Spansel.
And we are the student mentors for this year's Dialogue of Civilizations with Professor Arup Ganguly from Northeastern University. And this year we've traveled to Nepal and India. For the past 4 weeks we've been to cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, and to the Nepal, Kathmandu, and Pokhara. And right now we're here in Munnar, Kerala. And we've been studying climate change policy and critical infrastructure resilience and engineering. And what we've been able to do is listen to lectures from profound and distinguished professors from places like IIT Bombay and Bangalore. And not only that, we've actually taken coursework and have been studying rigorously these disciplines. And beyond just being here, especially experiencing these things, we've also wanted to take that away. What can we learn from these experiences? And so we've put together an activity called the War Games, where we've actually tried to inform policy decisions based on what we've seen.
Yeah, so the War Games are a representative group of people who are sent from 5 different sectors, and the objective is to create an integral plan for India's adaptation and mitigation towards climate change. And so these sectors have representatives from the food, the water, health, energy, and the business sectors. And they're working towards achieving 5-year goals and to ultimately achieve a 20-year plan to adapt to climate change within India. So the policy-making discussion represents the conference of parties in a way, and the final document is a list in the format of the IPCC recommendations for policymaker summaries, and those are presented as unanimous policy recommendations with both majority and dissenting opinions. And so that really encompasses the field of diversity of opinions that the students bring to the table from their interdisciplinary backgrounds. And we've also included prompts and interventions from stakeholders and the press to mimic a realistic scenario where policymakers are constantly with their ear to the ground on what's happening in the real world and are responding to events like current disasters or policy changes or agenda changes within their sectors. And so the culmination of this was a day-long discussion in War Game where all these sectors met, had agreements on some policies, and now we're going to conclude that with a policy document that will finally be presented to the government of India in hopes of guiding policy making towards adapting to climate change.
And in this video, we will see this and hear from each of the several teams presenting their points, their policy decisions, and how they've taken this this activity and really taken it to the core to actually put something realistic regarding India's state today.
So coming into the War Games, one of the main ideas to get out of this was the policy, understanding how policy is created and kind of the industries that go into creating these things. And one of the biggest challenges that we had is the broadness of these industries, and the War Game teams that we had did an excellent job of portraying the complexities of considering the industry side as well as some of the smaller companies within those industries. For example, when you look at how policies we created, including the irrigation strategy that we defined, water and agriculture had to team up really intensely in order to coordinate a lot of these ideas. And it ended up being a really positive experience in terms of understanding kind of why these decisions end up being made with a lot of different people. And so while this process, as we were discovering this process and as we were exploring these creations of policies from a lot of different perspectives, it was fascinating as a moderator to be able to see how a lot of these industries had these torn ideas and how business ended up playing into these things. And at the end in these final negotiations, understanding where our money is coming from and how to best use it in order to strategize and adapt as we continue looking at climate change in the long term.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I'm the representative for the energy sector. We acknowledge that 7 out of 10 of India's largest corporations are fossil fuel companies that generate energy for the whole country. But we also realize that if these fossil fuel industries kept at their pace, importing coal from other countries, it would further make India economically dependent on other nations, as well as we would have no more earth to pollute. So it would lead to the demise of the fossil fuel industry. Thus, we suggested a transition to renewables. Primarily a slow transition through cap and trade policies, as well as flexible coal plants being created to help with the intermittency of solar. We found that this was a hard goal to achieve and to get people to agree on, but what we learned is that it can be a win-win scenario for every sector as long as we keep long-term goals in mind, as well as if we're willing to give up immediate profitability for sustainable returns on investment.
Businesses' experience with the War Games was really interesting. We had to create kind of a goal of furthering business that already existed, but at the same time leaving room for business to invest. The only difficulty with that was all the other groups had more of a public sector outlook, so it was tricky to get some things passed that made things more private while they wanted to push more public sector. But overall, it was really interesting to hear their kind of values, and then towards the end, we were able to take more of a social corporate responsibility outlook, which allowed us to fund things that both furthered business and furthered their public sector agendas. So that was really informative, looking at how India has so much in certain aspects of its private sector that are not necessarily in the same line with public sector stuff was unique and interesting to like kind of match up with. And then lastly, we definitely had some issues getting people to agree on what was best for India, and that had something to do with us wanting just profit and them wanting just social work, and finding middle ground was a really interesting exercise.
Hi, I'm Kobo Jana. I represented the healthcare sector in these war games. Our biggest takeaway from the war games were how burdened the healthcare sector is with providing coverage to an entire population the size of India. We also were surprised to learn how underfunded healthcare is in this country when compared to other countries such as China or the United States. Our policy recommendations to the Indian government would be to focus on the entire health of the population by primarily reducing air pollution and cutting carbon emissions.
Hi, I represent the agriculture team for this war game experience with Northeastern University. It was really a very enlightening experience for us. We came in with a lot of research on the things that India needs to change in order to make its agriculture sector more resilient to climate change. So we came in really expecting to talk about things like education of rural farmers and irrigation of the entire country so as to provide more resilience and mitigation. And it was interesting to find that all of these different sectors that were completely related or unrelated to agriculture were on the same page as us. We were able to work with the water team, the healthcare team on educating rural communities. We even got along with the business team when it came into investing in innovation and technology. So that was a great experience to look at collaboration.
Hi, I'm Nina from the water sector. And what we learned through our research is that there are three major issues regarding India and water. The first one is the lack of access to clean drinking water. The second is inefficient irrigation systems. And a third is a desperate need for improved water infrastructure in India's urban centers. And we realize that it's really easy to be sort of apocalyptic about the water situation in India right now. Groundwater reserves are dwindling, 70% of the surface water is polluted. But upon further investigation, we saw that there are solutions to most of these problems. It's just a matter of implementing them. And so we looked at things like the traditional water storage and irrigation techniques that were used in India long before the British came and colonized. And we can see that bringing back things like this, along with investing in major infrastructure projects, is how India is going to address its emerging water crisis.
As a conclusion to the war games, each of the 5 sectors, agriculture, energy, water, healthcare, and business, came up with sets of policies and priorities that will help guide India's development towards climate change preparedness. They are as follows. First, agriculture. The team proposed a scheme called the FAIR Scheme to improve farmer livelihoods, agricultural output, and access to produce, ultimately decreasing loan defaults, hunger, and hardship. To accomplish this, they set the following goals for 2040. The first, a program to certify 80% of farmers in best planting and irrigation practices for their region. Second, to improve transportation networks for food distribution and reduce
food waste by 2/3. And the third, to improve disaster preparedness for food storage and field resilience to flooding. Working together with other sectors, agriculture has agreed with the water sector to monitor the groundwater table. They've agreed with the healthcare sector to decrease toxic fertilizer use and improve farmer health, both mental and physical. With the business sector, they've agreed to improve produce supply chain and support innovative agricultural startups. And finally, with the energy sector, they've agreed to reduce subsidies that encourage indiscriminate water usage through pumping. The next sector, energy, recognizes the increase in both population and energy demand per capita, knowing that it's necessary to increase energy production nearly exponentially. They recognize that the most cost-effective way to do this is by investing in renewable energy and decreasing dependency on international fossil fuels such as coal. Due to pressures from the agriculture and health groups, coal power plants will also need to improve scrubbing technology. Some goals they have to set to reach by 2040 are 1,000 gigawatts of renewable energy installed, to reduce their dependency on coal to 35% of grid capacity, and to promote microgrids and solar farm systems for currently off-grid areas. Working together with water sector, they will make sure that their high water demand for thermal, nuclear, and hydro power plants decreases. And they will work with agriculture to reduce the dirty energy inputs on farms. The next sector is water. Due to the high spatial and temporal variability in surface water availability in the country, water seeks to make all citizens' access to water more equitable and to regulate the use of water by industries. Some goals water has set for the next 20 years include the following. First, to prevent groundwater to fall to critical levels in more than 15% of villages. Second, to improve public drinking water and reduce reliance on bottled water. Third, to reduce leakages and back contamination of water distribution infrastructure. And fourth, to treat city wastewater. Water has agreed to work with agriculture sector on reducing the water required for irrigation, and to work with the healthcare sector to reduce pollution of water bodies. Moving forward, the water sector hopes to regulate industrial water usage and contamination, but hasn't come to an agreement with business on that. The next sector, healthcare, recognizes the poor state of healthcare in the country and the lack of access to healthcare in rural areas. And they're also forecasting an increase in health issues due to natural disasters, pollution, and overpopulation. They've set the following priorities for the next 20 years to address both of these issues. First, to take steps to prevent communicable diseases through education and vaccination programs. Second, the use of digital technology to transform the delivery of rural health care in order to increase accessibility. Third, a decrease in health-harming practices, such as open defecation, through educational programs. And fourth, to collaborate across sectors to adapt healthcare practices to India's changing climate, including working with the energy sector to improve air quality in the cities, and the water sector to reduce contamination during flooding. Finally, the business sector hopes to support a healthy and resilient India with a free market that will allow for organic growth, innovation, and development. To achieve this, they hope to create a climate resilient future for India. They will ensure sustained economic development for the poor, long-term growth for all companies, through lowering taxes and incentivizing growth. They hope that companies will be able to operate more autonomously from the government.
So one of the important aspects of our war game was the interdisciplinary group of students that took part in the war game, from engineering and hard sciences and also social sciences. And it's sort of rare in higher education to get a chance for people of all these different backgrounds to work together in a substantive way. But actually at the intersection of multiple disciplines, it can be very fruitful for producing new ideas and novel applications of existing ideas from one discipline to another. And this definitely showed in our discussions of the intersection of policy and engineering challenges, including dealing with climate hazards from lack of water and excess of water, especially around Indian monsoon summer rainfall, and relating these challenges to human health as well as economic issues and agricultural practices. And in our discussions, a lot of talk focused around the financial responsibility for dealing with climate adaptation, with an emphasis on the role of social entrepreneurship in filling the gaps and providing benefits and services that are not covered either by the private sector or by government. And also we talked a lot about the importance of understanding the cultural context in interactions with climate change. And these are some of the lessons we learned from our climate change adaptation war game.